Usually the first attachment you unlock on a gun in Call of Duty is an optic. But one of the main appeals of that system is the simple fact that a lot of the time the iron sights on a COD gun were not exactly helpful. Yes, some irons are nice, but other irons are absolutely horrible. Welcome to the channel, everybody. Jimmy or Chaos. This is the most requested COD history topic we've had in a while. Today, we're going to be taking a look at my picks for the 10 worst iron sights in Call of Duty history. You let me know in the comments which iron sights you think are the worst of the worst. Drop a like on the video. Make sure you guys are subscribed as always. And we're going to start things off at number 10 with the G36C in COD 4. Now, the G36C is somewhat of a fan favorite weapon, mainly thanks to the appearance in the original Modern Warfare 3, and even back in COD 4, it had some sauce in the right hands. But if you were running this rifle back in the original Modern Warfare game, you were absolutely using a red dot or an ACOG sight, because the iron sights, they were bad. They had that classic circle and a square design that a lot of Call of Duty guns use, but for some reason, the circle was really small and the square was really big, which made the iron sight super obstructive to use, not to mention the amount of muzzle flash there was every single time you pulled the trigger. Basically made it impossible to use things without a suppressor. The G36C was a really good rifle in COD 4, but you basically had to be using a red dot in order to use it effectively because you just weren't going to be hitting anyone with the iron sights. Before we move on, guys, I want to say one thing really quick. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for all the back and forth conversations you guys have in every single video I've put up on this channel since the beginning of time. I read all the comments. I truly, truly appreciate it. And it's really, really nice knowing there's so many passionate COD fans and part of this community that really get into these. Just wanted you guys to know that. At number 9, the AUG in Modern Warfare 2019. Now, the AUG is a chameleon of a gun, has a ton of different iron sights throughout COD history, but the 2019 version was terrible for some reason. I guess this gun was just kind of not good all around because Infinity Ward decided to make it an SMG without any good close-range killing power or mid-range potential. So I guess it makes sense that they would just go all in on the suckiness, give it some of the worst iron sights in the game as well. The AUG's iron sights in Modern Warfare look like Infinity Ward couldn't actually decide whether they wanted them to be raised or not. So they raised the sides, but they left the middle really low, which just made them obstructive and awkward to use, often resulting in you losing track of your target in the middle of a gunfight, you not being able to properly stay on point during sustained fire. Some people swear that the AUG in this game was underrated, but I think we should all be able to agree that the iron sights, they were bad. I'm willing to hear arguments that it had some decent stats once you kitted it out, but be real with me. You weren't using the iron sights, were you? You were using a red dot. At number 8, the SPAZ 12 and Black Ops. Everybody remembers the SPAZ from the original Black Ops, but there's a good chance that you have zero memory of what the iron sights looked like. Spam shotgun, ton of fun to run around with, hip fire, and that's what it was built for. There really wasn't any reason to ever aim down the sights with it, but if you did aim down the sights, you would be treated to some of the most obstructive and unhelpful irons in FPS history. Not Call of Duty history, FPS history. Frankly, I'm only putting it at number 8 because I'm pretty sure Treyarch knew how bad these iron sights were, and they didn't actually want you to use them. I mean, it was a semi-auto shotty, literally built for running around and hip firing. The iron sights were never going to get in your way on the SPAZ because you weren't really ever supposed to use them. That being said, if you look at it, they're horrible. So they're on today's list. At number 7, the MTAR-X and COD Ghosts. May be a controversial pick, but I have to be honest, I think the iron sights on it were pretty bad. The gun itself was amazing, yes. And there's a reason why so many people threw on some kind of optic, because the iron sights were some of the fattest, thickest, and most unnecessary in the game, if you ask me. Remember, this is an SMG. How many SMGs can you think of that have iron sights this obstructive? I mean, I guess you could argue the middle part of the sight where you're supposed to put your enemy at was relatively unobstructed, but the main problem with the irons on the MTAR was the simple fact that you lost so much of your peripheral vision every time you held it up to your eyeball. Why was the left side of the gun so fat? Why was the rim of the iron sight so thick? I love the MTAR-X as much as the next person, but we're being honest today. These iron sights were terrible. At number 6, the MG34 in Modern Warfare 2019. Nobody, and I mean nobody, likes their vision being obstructed when aiming down the sights of a light machine gun, and that's where the MG34 stood. I guess in Infinity Ward's defense, it was pretty obviously just a bonus throwback weapon in the game, and they probably didn't intend for it to be a gun that people use seriously. But with that being said, if you aim down the sights of this without an optic, you would instantly sacrifice about a quarter of your TV screen because of how bulky the gun is and how much it gets in your way when you're trying to stay on target. It also doesn't help that when you actually pull the trigger, the whole thing would bounce and kick and take up even more of your screen. With an optic, the MG was actually kind of underrated. Without an optic, It was almost unusable because of how hard it was to stay on target. But if you insist on using this thing without a red dot, maybe for camo challenges, I don't know, I would suggest sticking to hardcore, where you only need to land 1 or 2 shots to kill someone, because trust me, you're not going to hit more than 2 shots consecutively without using an optic. Now we arrive at the top 5. The M14 in COD 4, all the way back. It's supposed to be a precision weapon in the game. Semi-auto rifle, high damage, hefty kick. Pretty cool, right? Sounds awesome. A gun like that is best used with an optic. In order to get an optic, you had to level the gun up with the iron sights. And you know what's basically impossible? Just that. Because the iron sights were some of the worst ever. The M14's iron sights were so tiny, and yet so obstructive at the same time, which is almost impossible. If they somehow pulled it off, doesn't make sense to me. But if you used it back in the day, you know what I mean. The M14 sights were weirdly blurry when you hit the ADS button, which made it even harder to figure out what the heck you were aiming at and whether or not you were going to damage your target when you pulled the trigger. It was one of the least used guns in COD 4's multiplayer, and I wholeheartedly believe it had something to do with the fact that in order to use this gun effectively, you would have to grind for one of the optics, and people, they just weren't willing to use the iron sights long enough to do that. Modern Warfare Remastered slightly improved the iron sights on it by fixing the blur, but the sights themselves, still terrible. I think they're worthy of the number 5 spot. If you think it should have been ranked higher, wait until you see the nonsense that we're about to go over from 4 to 1. At number 4, the ISO 9mm in Modern Warfare 2 2022. When I was researching this video, I saw a lot of people on Reddit saying the iron sights on the ISO were terrible, and it confused me because I remember the ISO from Modern Warfare 2019 having, I would say, acceptable iron sights. But then I looked up what the Modern Warfare 3 version of the ISO looked like, and yeah, I get it. Not the Modern Warfare 3, the Modern Warfare 2. But these are horrible. The Modern Warfare 2019 ISO had solid sights. Super thin, super clean, easy to use. But this version not only made everything much thicker, much more obstructive, but it also added those weird wing look things on the side of the gun, which I think are supposed to look cool, but they really just obstruct your vision even more. I would love to hear someone explain why this change was made, because the ISO went from an SMG with solid iron sights to an SMG with genuinely some of the worst iron sights in FPS history. At number 3, the Brin in COD World War II. I recently did a video of the slowest firing guns in COD history, and the COD World War II Brin was number 1 on the list. And you know what? I really considered giving it the number 1 on this list as well, but there's 2 other guns I think had iron sights that were even worse. That's impressive. It's an impressive feat because the irons on the Brin are terrible. Honestly, the middle part of the sight where you actually use to aim, it's okay, and the low fire rate would make it easy enough to stay on target if it weren't for the fact that the iron sights on the Brin also force you to shove the entire gun on the right side of your face, which means you can't just see anything on the right side of your screen while using it. Yes, the iron sights on the Brin are on the side of the gun instead of on the top of the gun, and the magazine was on the top instead of the bottom. It's all back and forth messed up, so even though the sights themselves are perfectly decent, they're virtually unusable because of the fact you literally can't see anything on the right side of the screen while you aim down because the body of the gun and the giant vertical magazine is there. So you would constantly be getting flanked and shot on the right side, and there's nothing you could do about it. And yes, I'm being serious when I say there's 2 other guns that had even worse sights. I mean, there is. Strap in. It's about to get bad. At number 2, the M16 in Advanced Warfare. When it was added to the game, it quickly became a meme. There were several reasons. Firstly, the horrendous damage that made it a 2 to 3 burst kill despite having this pretty low fire rate, which made it arguably the worst gun in the game. But if you weren't running an optic on it, you would be treated to the second reason it was a meme. That was the iron sights. Terrible, horrible, dookie. Not only was the body of the gun huge and obstructive, but the whole gun model would move and sway with the direction of your character if you tried to use your exosuit, which it made the iron sights even more obstructive. Sledgehammer patched up the damage once or twice to make the gun more viable, but if you were using the M16 in AW, you absolutely had to use an optic. You did. The iron sights were unusable, and yet there was one other gun in COD history that had worse iron sights, and if you've been watching my channel for a while, you're probably going to know what it is. At number 1, the worst iron sights in COD history out of all of the hundreds of guns has to be the Uzi in Black Ops. I have a special hatred for this gun because that time I had to use it for a video, and it was some of the most painful Call of Duty play I've ever done in my life. The Uzi in Black Ops 1 is already one of the worst SMGs in COD history because the damage profile sucked, the recoil sucked, but if you tried to use it while aiming down the sights without a red dot, you weren't going to hit anything. Now the Black Ops 1 Uzi, despite being a very small gun, has some of the fattest iron sights ever put in a first-person shooter, to the point that I'm not sure if Treyarch meant them as a joke, a troll, or not. The ring around the sights is so big and obstructive, and the actual prongs that you're supposed to be lining up on your target are so fat, it's hard to tell if you're even centered on it. And then once you actually start shooting, the whole gun shakes like crazy. It kicks straight up, so it's impossible to hit more than 2 shots at a time. Horrible gun, horrendous iron sights, definitely deserving of the #1 spot on the list. There's no argument. The Black Ops 1 Uzi has the worst iron sights in Call of Duty history, possibly FPS history. Let me know one gun that was deserving of making this negative list today, and I'll see you soon.